Welcome back to Yappy Hour. My name is Jo Taranto and I'm co-founder of Good for the Hood. Good for the Hood is all about celebrating people who are doing fantastic things for their community and for the planet. And this week we are excited to introduce to you Jo Horsley. Jo is a marketing guru, a partnership creator, self-confessed earth nerd and a little bit of a misfit. And she's also general manager of Responsible Cafes. If you haven't heard of Responsible Cafes, where the hell have you been? She's here with us now to tell us more about what Responsible Cafes do, how you can get involved, and also just share a little bit about what she's learned over the last little few months of insanity. So please welcome this evening's chat with Jo Horsley. But can you take us back to where you grew up and what your community meant to you?
Yeah, I grew a little bit of a checkered start, actually. My dad used to live around, we lived a lot around different places. So I grew up in Texas and then Bahrain and Dubai in the Middle East. And my dad used to sell helicopters, actually. So we used to kind of like go where the oil was, which was, you know, quite a weird upbringing in expat life. And then my mum put her foot down in the early days and went, right, we're moving back to England. But my dad continued traveling a lot. So I actually was carted off to boarding school at 9 years old, which was the making of me, I think. I really, I loved it. And I went to a really unusual school in that it was very ahead of its time in terms of how they treated children and education, but also the environment. So it was a very environmentally focused school. And so we had, our grounds was on a beautiful farm. And so we'd like, you know, at 9 years old, I was doing lambing season. I was baking bread. I was like literally living the dream. My dad would drop me off at the beginning of term and be like, you realize you're going to like a holiday camp. And so I had this like really, yeah, it was incredible. And at the time I was a bit like, oh, you know, I didn't really get how unique it was. So, you know, we had like a green committee already, like, you know, and so you could be in the green committee, and we had like, it was like a council for like how recycling was going to happen in the school, composting, like it was so forward thinking in that respect. And I remember really clearly my geography teacher when I was about 10, she was the first woman to run the London Marathon dressed as a rhino, and she was such an inspiring
I did not know that was the first. You mean there's been more than one?
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of my background. Was brought up in a really kind of environment where lots of people cared, and my parents, as much as the weird thing is, because my dad did work in I suppose such a capitalist environment, he did have a massive social and environmental conscience, and we it was something that as a family we were very interested in. And I did grow up in the end, when my mum put her foot down, we lived right on the ocean, down in the south of England. So lots of sailing and really connected to the sea. And I remember we used to go mud walking a lot. And the first time that I kind of really noticed litter was in the mud. And you would be like, you know, my mum would be like, don't be careful mud walking because you cut your feet on the cans. And I'm just thinking, oh, that's really gross. Like, why would you throw cans in the mud and in the ocean? And I suppose, yeah, it's weird that I'm now so committed to stopping that from happening. Anyway, that's a bit of a download.
I did not expect any of that, but I think that's the surprising thing about you, Jo, is that you are a really interesting and complex person. You actually trained as a singer, is that right? I'm not going to make you sing. It's okay.
So thank you. You need to give me a bottle of rosé for that. My party trick is I can crack out a good Ave Maria if I need to for a wedding or a bar mitzvah. I'm available.
Amazing.
I trained to be an opera singer. That was what I kind of set out to do after I left school, and it kind of was a really interesting one because I'd really been prepped to do it from quite a young age. It was like I had quite a unique, my voice was quite powerful. And so for like 10 years, I was really on this train of like training, and a lot of scholarships, a lot of amazing singing teachers, and then going to a really prestigious music college in Europe. And it all just fell down around me really quickly. Like I really struggled with, being at music college, and it was a very difficult environment. It taught me a lot about how they're, I think musicians have to really, really want to eat, sleep, drink, shag music. And it's a very closed world. And I suppose what I realized about myself is that that's not me. I care about what was going on in the world. I care about, you know, politics and the environment and all these things. And if you're going to be I found in my experience of the musical world is that they just don't have the headspace to be thinking about those other things. Anyway, so yeah, left, and it was really sad.
Yeah, sorry. So I was going to say, so you left the music world, and did you feel kind of lost?
I felt really lost. Yeah, I spent a lot of my 20s kind of trying to figure out what to do with my life, and just kind of fell into a job that I was good at. Like I ended up working in music events, so I kind of still had the music background. So I did sound engineering and got into like the technical side of music. And yeah, I was very much involved with like doing still in music, but then moved into like brand sponsorship and activations and loving it. Look, I went to like, I've been to every single big festival and worked at a lot of them and loved it, but also noticed what a huge amount of waste there was, and that didn't sit well with me, and how how disrespectful some people can be in those environments. It used to really bother me. But yeah, I kind of found my way into in the environmental space really about 10 years ago, when my dear dad passed away, and it really rattled me, and it rattled my had a bit of an existential crisis, I suppose. And I saw that he had committed a lot of his life to providing for his family and really trying to do the best for us, but as a result maybe didn't follow through with some of the passionate environmental work that he wanted to do. And so yeah, I quit my job in advertising and went and volunteered. Actually, I went and volunteered for 6 months at the Climate Institute to work on a project on superannuation, and then I just kind of, it kept going from there really.
And you really have worked for quite a number of well-known environmental and social causes. Do you want to just name some of the things that you've been involved in over the years, and then how did you find yourself where you are now?
Well, look, it's not a big money spinner working in what I do. So I definitely, as you know, Jo, I kind of went out on my own and started kind of freelancing and having the door open to the brand work that I was doing, because I knew I could make better money out of that, but then trying to then do things that I really felt aligned to. So I've worked on the Garage Sale Trail, you know that one quite well. I've worked at a great organisation called Good 360. They're kind of like the Oz Harvest of stuff. I've done, that's just to name but a few. You've got me on the spot. I can't remember any.
No, and you just finished doing some work with some in the medical space as well, and.
Oh yeah. So I've done lots of TED, did a lot of TED Talks and TEDx Sydney, and I've just been working on a medical conference about creating a space for doctors to come together to talk about climate change and how that's going to affect the medical industry, but also pandemics, which is very on point.
Timely.
Yeah, I try to I know. So yeah, I try and break up my time with doing the better paid kind of stable event work, and then responsible cafes on the side.
So how did you come across responsible cafes? You've been involved for about 3 years, I understand, and it's been a big 3 years for responsible cafes. How did you get involved?
A big 3 years. So I after my first child, I got glandular fever and was really unwell, and was put on bed rest, which is something that's very foreign to me because I don't like lying in bed a lot. And my great friend Kath Leach, who you know very well, was doing some design work for this little community group called Responsible Cafes. And she was like, look, we really need some help setting up like a partnership framework. And I went, oh, you know, I could do that from my bed rest and volunteer some of my experience. I'd love to help you. And that was just before the War on Waste on the ABC aired. It was probably about 3 months before. And so my job was literally just to answer a few emails and create a few little kind of information sheets, and that was it. And then suddenly, overnight, I opened up my emails one day, and there was literally like 2,000 emails from people all around the world, well, all around Australia, saying, we've just watched this show, War on Waste, and I can't believe this is such a huge problem. What can we do to help? Like CEOs, grandparents, like kids from teachers, schools, everyone was like, and I was just like, I'm not in a position to respond to all this. So yeah, I literally had to like put together this like quick information kit to send out to all these people, and it just snowballed from there. We had like thousands of cafes signing up, and then I kind of just got left holding the baby. I don't know how I'm still holding it, but yeah, I now run it, and it's kind of moved from a passion project that I would do on the side, and now it's more my full-time gig at the moment.
And how has Responsible Cafes evolved from that 3 years ago to where you're looking at now and the next little while?
Oh, look, I mean, that's really hard because as I've been in it, it's like when you watch when a frog boils, you can't really tell the difference. So I still think, yeah, I still think we're like this like kooky little kind of community group, but actually maybe from the outside, it probably looks a bit more established and a bit more professional than I know that it is behind the scenes. Like we get some emails from cafes going, you need to do this and you need to do that. And we're like, oh my God, we're just a little community group. And then when they hear that, they're like, oh, sorry, we thought you were like this kind of like big organization. And but yeah, we're working on some amazing things at the moment. So it's always been, so last year I actually took on a full-time role working at Dyson actually. So I was doing a contract there for 6 months. And so I just let it kind of sit and do the bare minimum. And then after the fires over Christmas, I just was like, we've got to do something with this community. That there's this amazing community of 5,000 cafes now that are contacting me proactively, asking me to tell the world that they are composting, or tell the world that they've got renewable energy in their cafe now, and that they give away their coffee grinds, and we just didn't have the platform available to share that. So I've been working really hard during this lockdown period to update the portal on the cafe, on our website, so that cafes now can log in and update all these other actions that they're doing to save our little planet. So yeah, it's
so Responsible Cafes used to be about just a reusable cup. Do you think it's more than that now?
Yeah, I've got mine here. Look, I think we have to respond to the community, and the community is asking for more. I think we can't just stop at cups. I think the interesting thing about the cup is that it's a symbol of our single-use everyday habits. And if we can connect to a community member or a cafe to rethink their relationship with a very menial single-use product like a coffee cup, what else can we then get? What journey can we take them on? Can we get them to think about their food waste? Can we get them to think about their packaging? So I think I like to think it's more than coffee cups. But we are still getting millions of cups a year. Like I think an average cafe will save 35.2 cups per day from landfill if they ever signed up to be a responsible cafe. So that mounts up to we're talking hundreds of millions per year. So yeah.
It's amazing, isn't it? When you think and this is the conversation you have with people, right? It's just such a small amount, just a few cups here and there. And then when you start to quantify that at scale, it's quite amazing, right? I think when Corinne and I first started in Ride, and we were like, oh, you've got 100 cafes, and we're like, that's 1 million cups in that, first year or whatever.
Huge.
It was
Small community.
Suddenly became, wow, this is big. So if impactful, absolutely. So cafes can still sign up at Responsible Cafes. People can still look up their local cafes. What else can people do if they're wanting to support what Responsible Cafes do, or if they're a local council, or if they're a business that's wanting to know more? Is there ways that they can get involved?
So we're always looking for councils to partner with, because we feel like we have a great package available for councils to work with us and share all of the great waste education tools that we've created. A community member, we've got loads of free web resources on our website that they can download for free and approach cafes in their local area. And then from a cafe perspective, as of the next few weeks, in response to COVID, we are updating the way that a cafe engages with Responsible Cafes. We're actually ditching the discounts, not completely. The discount's going to be an option. So when this started, 5 or 6 years ago, there weren't other circular or other solutions to the disposable cup problem. It was very much a case of having your own cup and basically begging a cafe if they'd take it. It was such an unusual thing back 5 years ago, and now in metro locations it's very much the norm. But we're doing away with the discount purely because cafes are bleeding. Like, they've really struggled during COVID-19, and we want to offer them more options. So a cafe now will be able to register for one of the following. They can have a cup loyalty system, so they're going to get an extra stamp on their loyalty thing if you use your own cup. A cup swap system. Oh, who's that?
That's my dog.
Hello, dog. A cup library. So a cup library is a really easy thing that any cafe can do. They can just go to Vinnie's or get some old cups and just put them in a basket on the thing on the counter and say, take a cup away from you, just bring it back clean. It's a really nice community message there. Or there's the cup discount or the cup levy, which they're doing a lot in Europe, where you charge 10 cents for a throwaway cup. So yeah, there's more options there for reuse, basically, and
and that's obviously come back from feedback you've had as well, because I know that certain cafes are very committed to one or a couple of solutions, but maybe not all, or maybe not so it sounds like there's a lot more choices for them to get involved and still be recognised, which is fantastic. Is there? Yeah,
and I think they need to. So I think they need to be celebrated. I think that's the whole idea around Responsible Cafes, is it's a very positive message. We try and keep all of our waste education really positive and not kind of hark on about the doom and gloom issue that there is with plastic, and it is a really, really massive problem. And so I think something that's kept us going is that we are quite cheeky and irreverent with our messaging, and don't kind of scare people off too much with the fact that our oceans are just being pummeled by plastic.
And you have obviously seen a lot of cafes struggling through the last few months. What's the messages been back from cafes and restaurants throughout COVID?
Look, there's been a lot of fear, and quite rightly, especially in Australia, we didn't know how big the problem was going to be, and luckily we've managed to avert huge incidents and cases. But a lot of fear in accepting reusables. Obviously, there is a health risk between touching people and sneezing on them. However, at the beginning of last week, about 125 healthcare workers and scientists came together and signed an open document to state that using the right health and safety methods, reusables are safe to use, and actually the long-term effects of single-use plastic is actually a lot worse than us stopping reuse. So we're actually about to launch a big campaign this week to gently call on some of the large coffee chains like the McDonald's and the coffee clubs and the big chains to accept reuse again, because we feel like if we can get those organizations on board, then the smaller outlets and coffee houses will trust that reuse is acceptable. Look, we were very clear through the whole thing not to pressure cafes to accept reusables. The big message is, if you're going to take your cup, and if you want to ask your cafe, it has to be clean. Like, make sure your cup is clean. And then you can do what's called a contactless pour. So you can basically put your cup on the counter and the barista can pour straight into it. Or you can ask them to pour it into a cup that they would have a drink in. And then you can pour that into your own cup yourself. And they only have to wash up the cup that they've given you. But if all that fails, just go topless. Don't accept the pesky plastic lid, because they're a bit of a nightmare. So there's lots of options there for the community to play with.
Go topless. It's a great message. Yes. Sorry, and head to your website and check out. Excellent. Well, I'll put the link below.
Free resources. Okay, great.
Fantastic.
Thanks. Good plug, Jo.
Yeah.
Good plug.
No, anytime. How do you feel generally about the future for responsible cafes, for our cafes, for community, for the environment? Are you generally optimistic? Are you hopeful? Are you feel like, how do you keep going with all of this sometimes?
Yeah. Look, if I'm really honest, last year I was thinking of just letting it fade out and do its thing, because I thought, we've done its job now. Like, we don't need, it doesn't need to exist. I mean, that's how every not-for-profit should really be aiming for. Like, it's no longer needed. So I was a bit like, let's just let it go. And then I suppose the fires happened, and I just noticed how our government responded to that, in that it wasn't a climate matter. It wasn't an environmental matter. It was obviously a humanitarian disaster, and that huge amount of wildlife was killed. But they didn't want to have the conversation about the environment. And I was like, there's still a place for responsible cafes. There's still a really important place for us to ignite that community of cafes to try and do better, to try and work towards a cleaner future. So I think it's really bright. And weirdly, I think COVID's actually given us an opportunity to reignite the message, and it's definitely put a ball of flames in my belly to do more, and to try and keep it going. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited.
Awesome. Well, if nothing else, we hope that ball of flames keeps you going. We can't wait to see the next few things. It sounds like Responsible Cafe's got some big things happening, and perhaps at an event or a festival when they're allowed to happen again, or just a night out, we might see Jo sing Ave Maria at some point as well too. So I think there's a lot of hope.
Yeah,
I do miss it.
I literally, I've been putting my headphones on and dancing in my backyard in the dark. It's so good. It's so good. So,
there's a lot of things to miss at the moment.
You and me on the dance floor soon, Jo. I think
sounds like a plan. I throw terrible shapes.
It's my 40th birthday next month, and I've asked my husband to get me a pair of decks and a DJ course, because I just feel like I missed it. I'm just gonna be a 40-year-old DJ, I reckon. That's my
look. I think there's no greater aspiration. I think that's it. It just completes the loop of jobs you haven't yet done. So I think that's fair. Look, thank you, Jo. You are amazing, and everyone can check out Responsible Cafes. If you don't already follow them on Facebook or Instagram, please do. There's some really awesome content. If you're a cafe and you haven't signed up yet, please do. If you're a council and you haven't become a partner, please do. Jo, thank you. We've loved having a chat with you today, and we'll look forward to seeing you at a nightclub DJing soon.
Yeah. Thank you, gorgeous Jo. You have a lovely day. Lots of love.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.